So, welcome everyone. Make sure your cell phones are on silent, or if you're on Zoom with us, that your roommate is preoccupied doing something else, or out of the room.
Dogs too.
Yeah, dogs too, ferrets, weasels. Welcome. So, launch right into it. So, my name is Nathaniel Williams, and when Dr. Clinton Crockett Peters asked me to introduce him, I was honored. I felt a little out of my depth, and like every encounter I've had with this man, amused. He told me that if I couldn't do it, all would be well, save for the small tear that he'd shed. Well, this is Dr. Peters in a nutshell. A man passionate about conveying emotion through words and writing to the point of tasteful melodrama. In the several classes that I've had the great fortune to take with him, this man has proceeded to drop countless quotable one-liners. Some with context, some with none, and yet somehow all of them serving to make the class that much more memorable. He, and I quote, has described himself as Dr. Peters, drama queen, and given us such, well, let's call them memorable moments, such as, I don't believe in Scotland, and, or, it's like eating a soup made of rocks. I don't want to eat it, but I can taste it. And my personal favorite, tragedy doesn't change the flavor. I assume the rock soup, but, well, that's the thing. These quotes were provided to me by a peer of mine and a fellow student of Dr. Peters who knows him just as well, Maya Sedgwick. She has faithfully recorded almost every quotable thing this man has said, and I owe her my sincere thanks for archiving these gems and sharing them with me so I could share them with y'all tonight. Dr. Peters isn't just full of quotable one-liners, though. He's more than qualified to make said one-liners. He's, as we all know, an assistant professor of creative writing here at our very own college, and he has quite the resume. So he's author of Pandora's Garden, which was published back in 2018 by the University of Georgia Press, and the book song was a finalist for the ASLE Book Awards and the Forward Book Award. Now he's adding Mountain Madness, what we're here for tonight, to that list. So here we go, book number 2. And, well, he's got writing in American Essays of 2020, Orion, Southern Review, Hotel America, Oxford American, Catapult, the Rumpus, and elsewhere. I could go on. He's got quite the resume. Let's see. He also has won awards from the Iowa Review, Columbia Journal, the Society of Professional Journalists, and several others. And he holds an MFA in Nonfiction from the University of Iowa, where he was an Iowa Arts Fellow, and a PhD in English and Creative Writing from the University of North Texas, where he was a dissertation year fellow. In previous lives, he was an English teacher in Kosuge Village, Japan, and an outdoor wilderness guide, as well as a radio DJ. That last one does not surprise me whatsoever. I think you'll get the picture. He's an amazing, accomplished man who has reached countless people with his writing and has inspired many a student, including myself, to pursue literary goals of our own. It has been my great pleasure to introduce that one professor with the ongoing quote sheet, and without further ado, I give you Dr. Peters.
Thank you so much, Daniel. That was awesome, and you're awesome. And guys, it's been a day. Apart from the tornado sirens and wondering if my daughter and wife were okay, and the flooding and students who basically had to swim upstream to get here, Maya, thank you very much. So I'm feeling a little loopy, but I want to say thank you so much, just right off the top, to the students who are here and on Zoom. I mean, obviously you guys are why we are here, the professors, and I don't just mean as a job, I mean just as a sense of purpose. So really thank you. You guys are awesome. Also a huge thanks to Kathy Wilson. If you're listening, Kathy, you are my hero. As always, Dr. Sandy Meek, thank you. Dr. Will Donnelly, who is here, you guys, and Dr. Christina Booker, especially in the English department. You guys have been so welcoming and kind and supportive and just awesome. So thank you all so much. I'm gonna go ahead and get started, guys. Hey, I got a book out, which is always cool. I'm gonna read just the first essay, and then, depending on how I feel, how time's going, I might read a new thing, because hey, it's my reading, so I can do what I want. So this is just the opening essay. It's called "The Divine Coming of the Light." So only a fistful of people began their hike up Mount Fuji from the Sangen Jinja shrine at the bottom of the island volcano. Halfway up, these people encounter an army. The hordes of hikers drive or bus from a highway blasted into the mountain for the 1964 Olympics, and there, almost every night in summer, 3,000 people, winter coats in hand, backpacks of snacks and squid jerky and wasabi Kit Kat bars, supplemental oxygen and trekking poles, summit Japan's tallest peak. They shine their way up the mountain in the dark, rising through the clouds in hopes of catching the sunrise from the roof of the volcano, which is called Go-Raiko, the divine coming of the light. Go-Raiko is said to be good luck for a year, and I was beginning my year as an English teacher in Japan. But that 1 year would mushroom into 3, but I didn't know it then. Just as I didn't know my obsession with mountains that led to a job as an outdoor instructor, which blossomed after I lost my faith, would dwindle as my praying once had. They say everyone should hike Fuji once, but only a fool would hike it twice. I would hike the volcano 4 times. A symptom of obsession, not just for the views or the exhilaration or the macho codified bullshit, though there was a little of all of that. I hiked for what I felt the mountains meant to my inexplicable self, which I thought existed, though I couldn't then have articulated why. A visage of religion, a bland hope, a matter of instinct. Why did I feel satiated with the view over Tokyo Bay, with the clouds we rose above, the thunder and lightning reflecting my height then relative to the world? I didn't know, still don't, really, if it's a choice to believe in something. Mountain lust gripped me, as it sometimes does when I think back on why I would spend 24 hours hiking up and down a rivet of magmatic earth. One of the most climbed, one of the most photographed mountains in the world. Why I would hike in the dark through a storm to sit in the cold and wait for the same light that appears everywhere on earth. When I was 9, I watched a news broadcast from the foot of Mount Fuji as my family was getting ready for church. We lived in Lubbock, which at the time was the second most conservative county by votes in America. It was front page news, by the way. The town sat perched on the Cap Rock escarpment, a tabletop flat of land that spread across the Texas Panhandle, a mile up, overlooking the rest of the state. Dust walled off the town, rising from cotton fields watered by aquifers. The airborne agriculture interfered with our vision, so that most of what we saw was each other. There were more churches than liquor shops, if only for the reason that there weren't any liquor shops. I believed in Christ as many did because I grew up believing, just like I knew Columbus had sailed the ocean blue. It was penciled into the architecture of my childhood. While I gaped at the volcano, a female reporter suited in red relayed that at that moment, thousands of people were hiking to the peak. The camera zoomed in, and I could make out a zigzag route swishing to the crater. It was morning, but there was a string of headlamps like Christmas tree lights marching up the mountain. I traced the line in the TV glass with my little finger, thinking about caterpillars in the children's book, Hope for the Flowers. Hope for the Flowers, anyone? That's okay. In which butterfly larvae crawling over each other on their way to a crawl over each other on the way to a mountain. But once the larvae break through the clouds that had shielded the peak, they find that their own struggling mass is the mountain of ambition, a warning against the lust for climbing. I later gave that book to a person I loved before she left for a missionary trip in 2003. We had been Bible studying together in Lubbock, and we'd made tentative plans after her proselytizing journey to go preaching and teaching. But she left, and my stern father suffered a stroke and then another, and I felt my faith weaken without their confident voices. On a lark, I went backpacking with 2 friends in southern Colorado. 3 days of bushwhacking, traversing untrailed scree, tearing our clothes on the density of Douglas firs. We screamed for help in the wilderness with no answer. Eventually we followed a small creek which led logically downhill to a river and then over a few rises to a dusty parking lot where, miraculously, lay my Oldsmobile just as we left it. When we came out, I felt something inside me slip. The chalky imprint of limestone, a cloud haloing a mountain at eye level, left me uncertain about reality. Adrenaline had suffused me when lost, and I thought about my grave, staring up at Cretaceous monoliths. Like he did for the Romantics before me, capital R, Romantics. Shelley and Wordsworth and Bryan, God transferred from ominous sky to the awesome but very real bulkhead of landscape, both horrifying and gorgeous. This is what Rilke said are the two faces of reality, horror and beauty. The mountains, I thought, nature's spear points for the elemental power of the world. My Fuji hike began at the 1,200-year-old shrine, Sengen, where 6th century monks once trailblazed up to the mouth of the fire goddess Konohana. They were some of the world's first mountain climbers, and they built a place of worship at Fuji's feet, what is now a postage stamp of giant cedar trees wrapped in bows, set in the middle of the city of Fuji-Yoshida. Mountain worship was once endemic in Japan, and it makes sense to fear and revere beings who birth rivers and hiccup ash and molten lahar. A young monk directed me to a road that was quiet and leaf-lined to find a trail up the mountain. I began at 7 o'clock at night, so there was still light in the trees, casting vibrant shadows, and I noticed a tawny tomato color on the trunks as I gained elevation. From far away by satellite, the forest resembles an Afghan quilt, patched with the vermilions and rusts of autumn, woven onto the mountain from maples, cherry blossoms, and cedars. The path sloped for a few miles and hours, and then spiked, took the form of steps etched into the mountain with log beams and platforms stacked on top of each other like spiral stairs. I wound up and up. Hiking Fuji, you can traverse 3 generations of eruptions, several 100,000 years of fire. Baby Fuji, as it's called, is only 10,000 years old and still active. The mountain is the convergent point of not 2, but 3 tectonic plates. They affect each other, shaking up the world's 10th most populous country, and construct a mountain from the heat of the Earth's red heart. When Fuji last erupted in 1707, it sent ash and magma cut shrapnel into 4 metropolitan prefectures, the equivalent of an eruption outside Paris. Metamorphic highways of lava ran down the mountain, paralleling the road later carved by dynamite. But the mountain's explosions aren't only geologic. On one side of Fuji are 2 military bases, and in the night, while ascending, one can hear bombs exploding in the east like thunder. Beyond the bombs lies the infamous Aoki-Gohara Jukai, the suicide forest, where every year fire departments sweep up bodies of the despondent. The forest was the location of Aum Shinrikyo, the cult that gassed Tokyo's subways, as well as location of a Fuji-caused plane crash, a Boeing 707 with 125 on board, that, assaulted by hurricane-force lee waves fanning off Fuji, collided with the mountain. I wasn't thinking about all this convergence then, about how Fuji is near perfectly conical, about how it once dragged an airplane into its orbit, how Fuji rose to fame when Japan's most notorious shogun, Tokugawa Ieyasu, slaughtered hundreds of thousands and relocated the nation's capital to a tiny fishing village now called Tokyo. In the 17th century, when road trips required thousands of retainers, he forced vassals to cross country to a swampy hamlet twice a year, with as much as half of the budgets earmarked for travel. All within the shadow of Fuji, which became the subject of the most famous and beautiful woodblock prints in the world. I wasn't thinking about this art, or death, or violence, and how it all converged. I wasn't thinking that if I hadn't been religious, that if my father hadn't gotten sick and my love hadn't departed, I might never have obtained my fervency of mountain, and I surely wouldn't have hiked Fuji. I don't think I thought about the convergence of volcanism beneath my feet and the spirituality in my heart, nor did I worry about the storm above, typhoon leftovers, which likely was to block out whatever sunlight I hoped to see. After a few hours of tramping, darkness closed in, and I ascended the thick woods by headlamp. The cicadas buzzed through the night, and somewhere to the east, a bomb went off. This part of the hike, once the eeriness passed, was peaceful. A thick river of stars sinued above me, followed the wide trail cut through the trees. The path was steep but well-defined. Then, without warning, I broke through the tree line and saw the moon and met up with a line of 1,000 people. These were the hikers who had begun from the end of the mountain highway. When they appeared, it was like hiking on a moon, the landscape covered in gray dust and charcoal, only with the crowd like the Chicago Marathon or fans leaving the Texas Rangers Stadium. Streaks of phosphorescence for the newest trends and name brand gear, those fools with heavy backpacks, those envious types who were jogging. I hate those people. I'm just kidding. One man with a bicycle, another with skis. I with my backpack and a Japanese-English dictionary in one pocket. The trail zigzagged, etched into the rock, flanked by winded hikers, some toddlers, some ancient men and women, one man in a wheelchair. People saw me before and wished me well. Cheers, bonsais, there was the clanging of bells, the sharing of snacks. I hadn't expected this, the camaraderie. Hang on one second. In America, when I encountered hikers on the same trail as me, it was begrudgery. Here the people, when bundled up in rain jackets as the storm started to drizzle, icicle rain, decorated the mountain in bright flashes of well-meaning and color. I met several hikers who talked with me and shared their email addresses, though I have forgotten them all now. They blurred into the bright motion of life upon the volcanic peak and that had burned its top half and secreted the bombs and suicides below. Up here, everything was bare, everyone was exposed. I braked at a mountain hut, one of the dozen blasted into the mountain serving as bunkhouses and convenience stores. It was elbow to elbow to elbow to ski. On one side of me was a British father plying his toddler who wasn't faring well with the tiny oxygen canisters sold for $10. The skier was on my right. He was traveling alone and had a grim determination about him I'd come to associate with extreme sports athletes, those free climbers and backcountry kayakers who populate outdoor programs like I had worked for. He said the skis were for rock skiing and that yes, you could fall, but you wouldn't fall far, unlike in winter when the flanks of iced Fuji morph into a glass sheen where hikers and skiers glide to their deaths every year. Later I saw him skiing down. I was then bleary, exhausted, and the apparition of a man skiing down the same rock and ash face hundreds of us were stomping felt like an encounter with the liminal, a man on the way to his doom, a man making impossible. A person who I could tell had been afraid earlier was skimming along the edges of near death, screaming at no one. When my love left and my father, the deacon, started dying, I became acquainted with the unjust suffering a community like Lubbock tries to shield itself from. I trusted mountains because they were firm and had no intentions. They just were. They felt solid beneath my feet, omnipresent on a map. They couldn't change their mind, couldn't move, couldn't give up the ghost. But this is the narrow view. Mountains rise and flatten in the blink of a geologic eye. Fuji is in its fourth incarnation, and ancient Appalachians in America in their third. Mountains once existed over Lubbock, monoliths resembling giant hands clasped, stretched to the sky. On Fuji, I saw hiker after hiker pocket volcanic stones. Lost my spot. Hiker after hiker pocket volcanic stones from the edge of the trail. There must have been thousands of stones taken every day, millions every year. How do you move a mountain? One wing brush, one hand at a time. We were all moving in that geologic and geographic space, mountain and human. Most of the humans were trudging, but a few were packing in and crawling off. The altitude punishes the human who drives up from sea level and embarks in an atmospheric dart. In the winter every year, the fallen are reported. In summer, it is the lost, those who wander into the Wang Prefecture, descending the peak. But most make it to the top after a night's slog. Many watch the sunrise on the way, inglorious beneath the peak in its shadow, but the light is still there. Several hundred sleep fitfully in the huts, buried in concrete that burrows into mountain. They lay on stacked bunks like wrapped wine bottles. At about 3 a.m., a weariness overtook the hikers I passed, the ones summoning with no plans to stop for a fitful sleep. They appeared less able to bid me well or offer me a bite of squid. But 3 o'clock is the darkest, coldest part of night because it seems the farthest from the day it's about to begin. It is also the highest point on the mountain where turning around is still a possibility, an arduous but doable backtrack. People's faces appeared glum and they gazed inward. They sat on the volcanic boulders that flanked the ashy trail while the storm overhead became a fog that we had to swim through, cold, skin bursting wet. I too had lost vitality. My ardor for the mountain, my love for the hike, the thrill of exposure. The secret about most hiking is that the mind is not wandering in taskless places. It is not romantically inclined. It burrows into itself like those concrete huts, hundreds of secreted thoughts like exhausted hikers in beds, turning and turning beneath the surface of things. Was I wasting time? Should I be home with my father? What was my purpose? After spending most of the night on the peak, I learned from the fellow hiker that the winds were gusting at 100 miles an hour. With all the hikers shivering in the gale, I was amazed that if one descended just a few meters from the peak, there was a wall that would protect me from two angles. But I didn't observe, and wouldn't, until I rose to descend 3 hours later, with the thin flakes of white paper and an earthy, biting odor, the pale looks from other hikers who were aware that I had sat downstream of the highest toilet in Japan. This is why Fuji didn't get World Heritage status until 2013. For decades, the septic tanks had been left open to drain. But, shit or not, the building faced east. This I did know. Despite the fact that the wind was strong enough to topple me, the fog so heavy, I couldn't quite see beyond 30 meters, and I couldn't smell anything. All the other people on the peak were facing the same direction, ready to drink up the sunrise. Because Fuji rises from an unassuming valley and is jet black from the waist up, from below it appears to be a spaceship set down on Earth. Because we hikers, along with the wind and the rain, were moving Fuji, one keepsake, one speck of dust at a time, the spaceship was moving, just as the three tectonic plates below, the convergence of the world's soup crusts, pushed and ground their way across the world. The most visceral relief from the Lubbock upbringing I lost was the idea of the eternal. It was not my body, but my essence that would emanate infinitely, and I would be conscious of what was to come to this world that I cared about. My idea of mountains continued this hope for infinitude, but watching the clouds part to reveal the smoky haze of dawn, I sensed in some animal way a connection not with the rock beneath me, but with all the other fools who had climbed Fuji to be here for this brief spark of sun. Only the sunlight wouldn't come. It was dramatic. The light ducking beneath the clouds, then revealed. The storm rolled up and down like an ocean, with the sweet light appearing over the valley and the mountains in Tokyo Bay and the other big cities of Kanto. In mythology, of course, Japan was birthed from the celestial fire, and the national flag bears its root. The nation was born in the sunrise that lasts for only a glimpse before it passes overhead and becomes night, just as a mountain whirs away within an eon. The flicker of sun on the peak would appear, and then disappear, then reappear, and then I'd doubt, then believe. And at one point, I gave up choosing which outcome I wanted, and instead sat back against the building I didn't know to be a bathroom. But I'll be honest and say I don't know if I stopped believing. I don't know if I could. I saw the sun every day, and I knew it must come up somewhere. Somewhere there was a sun, as there is now, as I write this at night in the cold light of winter, 10 years later. The sun is on the other side of the earth, warming Japan, as it did me the first time I climbed Fuji and waited. I stood up for the final curtain with all the other hikers on the peak. The clouds washed away as the light started to spread over the horizon, meek at first, a tittering, dull orange. Then the welder's torch appeared, and a daggering twilight ray. Then the oval of an egg yolk, the lit nub of a cigarette. The light was water, warming us, washing away the night's exhaustion. I was bathed in sweat, but the beam cooked that away, made my skin feel alive and new. The Japanese on the rise above me began giving bonsai cheers as the sun fully cracked the horizon. Thousands of people had come to watch the same light we had seen in different parts of the world. We all bowed, saluted the dawn, and the warm sight, unfiltered, clear as a drop of oil in an otherwise still ocean. And trailing down from the crater in raincoats and sun hats and hiking boots was a zigzag, all the way as far as I could see to the foot of Fuji and beyond, which I had seen as a child, zigzagging to the water and the cities. People at different stages of the hike, at different huts, some at rest, some already heading back, down, foreigners and countrymen, all the way up the morning mountain of light. So that's the line coming up of light. Thank you all for listening. That was my first piece. What time is it? 7:47?
7:57.
7:57? So, think about reading parts of this. I don't have to read the whole thing. So this is brand spanking new, right? So go easy on me. Or don't. Or don't. I don't know, we'll see how this goes. It's my reading, I thought why not read something new. Let me just say one more thing. I hate to bring this down a little bit, but not too long ago, we lost Barry Lopez, who was one of the best writers ever, and he was, a mentor of mine at Texas Tech, and I read that essay, The Divine Coming of the Light, and he had very good things to say, and I will remember that for always. So, thank you, Barry, wherever you are. Okay, so this one's called The Failure of Creation. Let me know what you think, okay? I rarely put little quotes at the beginning, but this one I decided to. So the failure of creation. Future events, such as this, will affect you in the future. The Amazing Criswell, Plan 9 from Outer Space. Once upon an era, dinosaurs vanished, and no one knew why. Theories bellowed from academia about Cretaceous flu, continental-wide cold snaps, galaxy-sized supernovas, and even our own mammalian ancestors devouring eggs, preying on the young before they could mold into mesmerizing forms. As a dinosaur fanboy, I remember well the mystery of the terrible lizard's disappearance, the lesson from the movies I inhaled of oblivion. I pursued 1950s dinosaur B-movies wishing to solve the enigma, hoping to escape the fate I fretted. A Texas-sized meteor on the horizon. I ogled long necks, nightmared at teeth, and I pictured cinematically my end. The stomp of an earth mover, the F-350 bumper mouth, the child predator. Like a good bad movie, I possessed opposing thoughts. The assumption that annihilation lay in another continent in another era, and the ever-present anxiety that it did not. Horrible movies release every week. Herds of them stampeding Netflix. But the transcendently wrong-headed, movies that dive into a swamp of obsession and arise glistening, fostering awe, they flip a switch of one thinks of as quality. They warrant museum-like preservation. For me, the master chef of the wonderful bad is 1993's Carnosaur, a dino thriller hatched from the Pope of pop cinema, lord of low budget, Roger Corman's mind as a cash grab to release ahead of Jurassic Park. Corman's monster earned millions in theaters. I should say he ate or chomped millions. Chomped millions in theaters and then stormed video stores well ahead of Spielberg's epic. Which is why I found it at a Blockbuster, age 10, still playing with Brontosaurus. Among the flocks of good bad I have consumed, Carnosaur craters me the deepest and covers the widest footprint because its DNA and genes explain life itself. Among the creatures that children weave with their imaginations, dragons, krakens, yokai, wendigo, Owahura, Baba Yaga, Totoro, the dinosaurs are flesh. They exist beyond storytelling, footprints pockmark continents still, breaths fogged air, bodies becoming bedrock. They fed and killed and died and birthed and fed and killed and died where we do. Dinosaurs are the ultimate once-living power fantasy. Small children, quote, gravitate to sheer immensity, the image of something huge and alive, writes dinosaur scientist Rob DeSalle. Like superheroes, they reveal ways of being, conceptual spaces we human mortals can never fill. They are chicken-sized in sequoia. They mime construction cranes as well as mallards. They flock the prairies, the deserts, the seas, the skies, the swamps, the treetops. They wielded club tails, Arnold Schwarzenegger-sized claws, head fins, battering ram skulls, and back sails stretching and shadowing the earth. They grew horns and could smash shit. They had teeth the size of bananas. Because dinosaurs did so much, a child dreams but does not say, Mom, they could come back. And if not them, something besides us. Children don't share the adult faith in human inevitability. They are more in tune with how vulnerable we are. Carnosaur follows a mad scientist, of course it does, named Dr. Tiptree, who resurrects dinosaurs. 3-time Oscar-nominated Diane Ladd plays the gene tinkerer, who Govert Minion dubs, quote, the fairy godmother of military biotech. After working for the Army, Tiptree is hired by a poultry company to GMO a better egg. This is really the plot. Instead, she develops a WMD that causes chickens to become pregnant with dinosaur eggs. Fancy that. But the twist is the shells explode, killing their chicken mothers. The biological weapons hatch, revealing Tyrannosaurus rex, Dicyaceus, can someone pronounce that? I'm going to give that a try. Deinechus, and raptors brought back to life to retake the world. The Earth was not made for us, Dr. Tiptree says. She was made for the dinosaurs. Human beings are ants crawling through their living rooms. Diane Ladd mines the script for the mythical baddie Dr. Tiptree from the great madcap scientist of 1950s B movies. She sports emotionless expressions in a lab coat when not necessary, and her deadpan lines ensue while Ladd looks off camera almost certainly at cue cards. In a dimly lit lab, her lair, Tiptree's secrets of Tyrannosaurus. When a coworker is disloyal, she feeds him Terexi. She asks as she murders him, what are we anyway but a set of instructions for the reproduction of the species? Later, another assistant fevers, having caught the dinosaur flu. Dr. Tiptree prepares a couch. She says, right now your body is an evolutionary battlefield. Susan raises her feet into her boss's hands, birthing a monstrous egg. She succumbs, and Dr. Tiptree cradles a newborn, stroking it like a mother. In a review, the critic Roger Ebert said, I thought the plot got a little murky when all the women started giving birth to dinosaurs. And just so you think this is totally relevant, in 2016, the scholarly journal Poetics published a study of good bad movies. It read, quote, enjoyment of trash films is linked to high intelligence. Mic drop. Perhaps like me, you weren't surprised. Before 2020, a majority of the crowds at the monthly curio screenings I attend had earned advanced degrees. Cultural omnivores, the journal Poetics dubbed us. The trick, film critic Genevieve Koski has said, is to think of bad as an aesthetic quality. Bad movies monger the excessive. They offer a buffet of all things viewers shouldn't eat. They birth special effects that are special. Dialogue speaks from someone only vaguely familiar with humanity. Quote, bad movies are full of people who were never meant to act, writes Rob Hill in the Bad Movie Bible. Scripts short-circuit the brain, provide Zen koans that are spiritually transcendental. They enact Dadaism, superstring theory, Jacques Derrida. How bad movies get made is that many arise from a singular intelligence. Someone eurekas an hallucination teleports to a canvas divorced from the usual committee productions. Bad films are someone's dream. Take Tommy Wiseau's trance-like The Room, which serves an example, but so does James Wynn's Birdemic Shock and Terror, which managed less competence and rumors abound his badness was intentional. Italian Claudio Fragasso refuses to condemn his masterpiece, Troll 2. So too Las Vegas architect Neil Breen with his entire narcissistic cinematic universe, in which he plays James Bond-like spies, super hackers, martial art warriors, future robots, and God, sometimes in the same movie. Elves peaks sheer loneliness. The plot follows modern-day Nazis resurrecting a demon elf in order to impregnate a virgin waitress, releasing Satan's horde in the beginning of the Fourth Reich. However, they are thwarted by Grizzly Adams himself, Dan Haggerty, who discovers the plot while working, you guessed it, as a mall Santa. Bad films make viewers scholars by diving headlong into wrong decisions, revealing what's palatable and what most certainly isn't. Critic Nathan Rabin writes, quote, you can learn a lot about society by the pop culture it embraces, and just as much by what it angrily rejects. Badness mesmerizes. A spark of the brain left unsatisfied by proficiency. These movies make you feel alive. They rip our attentions away with Tommy Wiseau's close-ups of his own butt cheeks, Dame Judi Dench licking her own thigh in Cats, the crazily prolonged death by Shuriken in Enter the Ninja, is the creation of wonder through bafflement. Something so beyond human behavior it challenges us to redefine human behavior. Like tragedy, great bad movies help viewers not take the rest of cinema and life for granted. I think I'll stop there for now. But just so you guys don't think this is totally frivolous, I sort of connect this to evolution. Because like, what's evolution except like genes like miscopying, right? But you have to have those miscopies to like evolve. So I feel like bad movies are those miscopies, right? Like they give birth to something else. They're also a lot of fun. So I think I'm gonna pause there for now. Thank you all very much. And Zoom Man, I can't see you, but I know you're there. That's a quote from City of Angels from the 1990s, Nicolas Cage. Here's my book, guys. Kathy Wilson rescued us yesterday, so please think about buying it. By the way, I will happily sign one, or if you want, I have these things I can sign, and I will mail them to you, and you can like stick them on your book, right? And if you want me to like draw pictures of a sloth or a horse, I'm happy to, or a dinosaur, I'm happy to. I'm not saying they're going to be good, but I will do it. So, I think it's time for questions, yeah? Oh my god, there's the infinite regret, I love it, that's great. So it looks like there's something in the Q&A. Oh, what do we got there? Harley, can we post questions in Q&A? You can do it now, yeah.
The Q&A is down on the bottom, too. You see that?
Oh.
How do you spell Neil Breen? Yeah, Matt, oh my god. Neil Breen is the best. Yeah, so I am a huge fan of the podcast, The Flophouse, and that was where I first heard about Neil Breen. But then in Rob Hill's Bad Movie Bible, he actually has all of Neil Breen's movies in the Bad Movie Bible, and he's the only film creator that he chronologues like his entire oeuvre, because it's awesome. If you haven't seen Double Down, go watch Double Down now. The thing is, Neil Breen is like dead serious that his movies are good. So it's sometimes hard, I've been told, I haven't tried, but it's sometimes hard to get them, because he doesn't like it when people make fun of him. But you don't feel bad because he is such a narcissist that it's just like he sort of has it coming. But yeah, so that's how I got Neil Breen. Let's see here. Yeah, he is a true author, I get it. How do you get inspired? Hey Cheryl, what's going on? How do I get inspired? Man, I don't know. Students. I don't know. Okay, I'll just, you know what? I'm just a curious nerd. And I'm just constantly, my problem is not finding things to write about. It's having enough time to write about all the things I want to write about. Like, seriously, like, that is my issue. Is I have so many projects that are in progress and then are, like, on the back burner. I have like a back burner of a back burner of a back burner that it's just, I don't know. And maybe that's a good problem to have. I just have so many things I'm interested in. I will say as a nonfiction guy, it helps that I'm not only willing or wanting to write about myself, that I often like to write about other things like Carnosaur, like researching a little bit of Fuji, even though it's like my sort of memoirish thing. Or if it's, you know, last 2 years ago, you guys, if you were there, I read this essay about cockroaches. So I just love researching things that I have questions about, right? Because, you know, I have sections, really, that I just love it. I just love it so much. It's so much fun. I mean, it's hard, like, but all writing is hard, right? You know, because it can be lonely. But thankfully, I don't know. I have not run out of things that I'm curious about yet. Maybe that'll happen. I don't know.
Everything says swap to the Q&A.
What?
So we got the Q&A window here with all the questions.
So I should do this one too?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll hit answer live.
Oh, hey, Kyla. Thanks. I'm proud of you too. Do you ever ponder the different ways your story would have if in the omniscient perspective and third person view, perhaps it was taken from the perspective of the mountains itself? Oh, I love that. Oh my God, that's great. I mean, so just because I write nonfiction, the answer is yes. God, I love that. That's great. Oh my God, I want to do that now. I want to write an essay like from the perspective of like my dog. That'd be great, wouldn't it? Or like the robin that keeps attacking my window because I think he thinks I'm a threat. That would be great. Oh, I love that. I'm going to say I haven't pondered it enough, Matthew. And I'm going to say thank you for making me think of that. So, but again, because I write about other things, sometimes I'm just not in it. And then it does become sort of a third person sort of thing, right? I will say I get tired of myself. So I do want to write about other things, right? Because, yeah. Matthew again. Is there any inspiration from your previous writing or present? I don't know. Okay, I will say this. So this book, guys, I've been working on this since 2008. That is a real year that I really started this book. And oh my God, yeah, that was a long time. Now I wasn't working on it constantly. Like, don't worry. But I started working on it in Japan at a Denny's. I still remember this vividly. They do have Denny's in Japan, and that's when I started writing in my journal. in a Denny's. But then when I went to my MFA, I realized I had like this block. I wasn't able to write this because it was more about sort of my experiences. And I actually found it was easier to write, at least initially, about other things. And I sort of tell students this sometimes, it's sometimes easier to write about other things first because we're not always able to see ourselves, you know, as accurately or as objectively as we need to in order to write about ourselves. I mean, think about it this way, right? It's so much easier to give your friend advice than to sort of give yourself the same advice, even if you need it, because we just see other people in relief. So I found that once I wrote my first book, Pandora's Garden, I was able to write this book a lot easier, right? Like once I wrote about rabbits and Godzilla and Kosuge, I was able to then look at I'm just Godzilla in another form, right? I was able to then look at because I found like what's interesting about rabbits, Kosuge, Godzilla, you know, all that stuff. And I was able, okay, now here's my life, what's interesting about that? What's engaging, what would, you know, possibly serve for readers? So I'd say in that way, it definitely inspired me. So like I pretty much put this book on hold for my MFA, and then I didn't pick it back up again until I was doing a PhD. And this was actually my PhD dissertation. By the way, Dr. Jill Talbot, if you were listening, you are awesome, and thank you again so much. I can't say it enough. Matthew, Mia, what is your main inspiration in your work? Coffee! I don't know. Other writers? Yeah, I mean, this is a dumb answer, but other writers. Whenever I'm in a slump or whenever I feel like I can't write, I just read good writers. People like Alina Parciello, like Jericho Parms, my friend Lina Maria Ferreira Cabeza Venegas, my friend A. Kendra Green, and so many other good writers who are out there right now. I just read their stuff and it just triggers things and I just want to write. Oh, I also read literary journals. I love literary journals. Like I'm reading New England Review right now. I read Georgia Review not too long ago, Arts and Letters. There's so many good literary journals. I read for one, Pleiades, you know, plug for Pleiades. And I love doing that. That can be inspiring too, right? So yeah, definitely. And then I don't know what else. Research. I mean, I just love doing research. I can be such a ravenous, you know, curious nerd that if I want to write about a topic, I'll just use interlibrary alone and just get all the books on a topic. And in reading stuff and taking notes, it usually can inspire me, and I riff on that. Do I consider? I'm actually Mary Boyd. Hey, Mary. Good to hear you. Thanks for joining. I was pretty happy to hear that watching trashy movies is linked to higher intelligence. Yeah. Does this also work for reading traffic novels? You betcha. Definitely. Actually, I don't know. I don't know. The article is only specifically about movies. I can't see why not, though, right? Like, if you're reading trashy books, I still think it's that cultural omnivore kind of thing, right? Like, it still would help. I mean, here's what I would think. I would say if you're reading only, like, the masterpieces of anything, I feel like that you lose perspective. So I feel like actually reading trash in anything, you sort of, you recall how special these masterpieces can be, or even just like competent things, right? Like if you watch so many bad movies, you're just like happy to go sit in a movie that's like, you know, mildly competent. So I would say yes, I would think so. Let's see here. Oh, hey, is that Virginia? Hey, Virginia. I don't have a question so much, just wanted to say thank you for the reading. Oh, thanks, Virginia. That's awesome. You're awesome. Let's see, Matthew up here. Do you consider hiking Mount Fuji more draining physically or emotionally? Would you actually change family situations where it's dire? That's a great question. So I will say, the last time I hiked at Fuji, it was pretty exhausting physically. I really was hurting in my hip. And it was like a constant pain, especially on the way down. Basically, my hip was on fire the whole way down, and that was the last time. I was like that 4 times, and I'm done. So that was really draining. Yeah, I wish the answer were the emotional part. I'll be honest, I don't think I was thinking about the emotional stuff consciously when I was doing the hiking. I was pretty much just sort of in it, right? And I would say the first time I hiked up Fuji was actually pretty thrilling all the way up and down, and I actually really loved it. And the other 2 times were really fun too. It was really only that 4th time that I think I was just in a lot of pain, so it wasn't near. And then the problem is when you're in pain, then you start thinking about emotional stuff, right? It's kind of a spiral. So that kind of sucked. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what was happening unconsciously. Like there might have been a lot of that going on. Yeah, I'm not sure. It's a good question though. Thank you, Matthew.
What was your favorite time you hiked Mount Fuji? Like
The first time.
First time?
Yeah, the first time was the best. Yeah, I mean, the other times were really great. And oh my God, I'm so lucky. I have a friend named Trevor, if you're there, hey. Trevor hiked up Fuji. He lived near Fuji, like right there. He hiked up it like 11 times before he actually saw the sunrise because there's always a lot of weather. I got to see the sunrise all 4 times, which was so lucky, and it was beautiful. So every time was really fun. But I'd say the first time, because it was all new, it was all fresh, and I'd only been in Japan like a couple of weeks, right? So it was just like...
Right out the gate.
Yeah, it was right out the gate. Yeah, it was really cool. Thanks. What keeps you inspired? Wait, I already answered that one, right? The inspired one?
Mm-hmm.
How much Japanese do you know? あれは日本語喋れますか? 日本語わかる? わかる? ちょっと話してみよう。ね、なんで? Do you speak Japanese? I speak a little bit. Oh, so here's the story. I had to. They told me I didn't. They were lying. Really, if you look up, I don't know if it's still true, but they were like, you don't need to know Japanese. And they sort of don't want you to because you're just like an English, machine. But when I got there, I couldn't mail a package, and I just started crying in the post office. I just wanted to mail a package to my mom, and it just was not happening. It wasn't even getting close to happening. And you'd think, couldn't we figure this out? But we couldn't. So I was like, okay, I need to learn Japanese. So then I had to, and then I sort of really wanted to learn because I was the only native English speaker in that entire town, and there was really only a couple of people who spoke English at all. So I just sort of had to if I wanted to have any kind of human connection, right? Beyond pointing at stuff, right? Yeah, and you know what? It was good. It was really good. So I met my wife in Japan. She's Japanese, and we're teaching our daughter Japanese, and that's really cool. And basically, my daughter is kind of a native Japanese speaker, I think, right? We pretty much only speak Japanese at home, and that's been fun. So yeah. Emily, hey Emily, great to see you. This is a question if I recommend watching Red Letter Media videos. Okay, I'll check it out. Best and worst, they watch them review really poorly done. Heck yeah, that's right up my alley. Cool, thank you Emily, I will absolutely do that. Caitlin, you mentioned you have blocks for writing sometimes. What do you do kind of to get out of those slumps? Also, I love this. Thanks, Caitlin. I mentioned earlier I read. That's honestly the best thing. It's just I either read things by writers who are writing to write, or I do some kind of research on something that I think I might want to read. I might want to write about, right? So I just not too long ago I checked out and I bought some books on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and so I just have a bunch of books on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and I'm just sort of researching them. And so if I'm in a slump, I'll be like, well, now I can do research, right? If that makes any sense. Or for me, submissions and publishing is part of the process. So I feel like if I can't write or get anything down draft-wise, I'll just start typing up cover letters and start sending out submissions, because that I feel uses a different part of my brain than the one that puts sentences together, if that makes any sense. But it's still part of the business and the process, right? So actually I like days like that, because when I just want to write, I don't want to submit, you know what I mean? Because that's a different part of my brain. I also try to stick to whatever it is I feel most motivated to do. I try to harness whatever motivation I have, because hey, writing's hard enough, I might as well use my motivation. And I've learned to not second guess my creative instincts. So again, if I'm interested in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which sounds like a silly subject, although it's not, by the way, it is in the Museum of Modern Art. That is true. I'll go with it, and if people want to say that that's not worthy of research, I'm like, okay, well, fine. Yeah, what else? So reading's big, literary journals is big. I don't know, this sounds stupid. Exercise, getting the brain going for a walk, playing with my daughter. I don't know. Yeah, I also love. So Dr. Will Donnelly has just gone viral, by the way, and this is actually perfect, right? This quote. So go look at Dr. Will Donnelly's Twitter. Is that okay if I tell him to look at his Twitter? Go look at Dr. Will Donnelly's Twitter, and he has a great quote by Marilyn Robinson. I'm not going to butcher it. Just look at it, but it's something along the lines of, it's good, right? If you can't write, right? Is your standards are higher or something?
Yeah, that your standards have outpaced your results.
Yeah.
The results will catch up.
I love that. Yeah. So take heed, I guess. Should I keep going?
You're
I want to answer Kanaja's question. Hey Kanaja, do you eat Doritos while you write? Are you kidding? Yeah. I mean, the problem is the cheesy fingers, right? It's the curse of the cheesy fingers. That's always the problem, right? So it's harder.
Is it the curse of the cheesy fingers or the choking mid?
Oh, the choking mid-class. So in my writing about place class, I almost died Tuesday. And it serves me right, I cracked a dad joke while I was mid potato chip eating, and I snorted at my own joke, because that's when you know it's a good joke, is when you snort at your own joke. And then I inhaled a piece of potato chip, and I almost died. That would have been a great Darwin Award. But yeah, I'll eat. Well, okay, I usually don't eat while I write, and I think it's because my blood will go to my stomach, and then I can't, think. I almost always drink coffee when I write. But sometimes if I've got too much coffee in my system, I start getting jittery, then I'll eat something to soak up the extra coffee. This is TMI, right? Is this TMI? Okay. I also really like bagels because I feel like bagels soak up the coffee really well. So the bagels.
That's what I do.
Yeah, and you don't get the cheesy hands with bagels, right? Yeah. Hey, Joel Talbot! I'm glad you're here. That's great. Well, hold on, it's here. Thanks for the sponsor. Welcome for inspiration, I guess? Okay. Favorite literature when young? Oh, is that my mom? Is that my mom? Is that Tanya Peters? Hey, Mom, what's going on? Oh, you know? What? Why are you quizzing me, Mom? Is this the exam? So, you'll remember, you read to me the Great Storytime Illustrated Bible, and I remember that like it was yesterday, just curled up in your lap, and I'd read a page, and you'd read a page, and there would be these huge pictures, and it really sparked my imagination. So, thanks, Mom. That's great. Let's see. Oh, hey, there's Jill Talbot. Shout out back to you, dear Clint. Excellent. If you had to pick one essay to represent your work so far, which one would it be and why was it about? Oh my God, I don't know, man. I have this one. So I have a couple essays. I'm gonna pick three. I'm gonna cheat. I'm gonna pick three. I really like this one called Rabbits and Convicts. It's not everyone's favorite. It's pretty information dense, and I admit that. But it was one of my first, and so it's still kind of my baby. And it's about how rabbits have taken over Australia, and Australia's this land of convicts. I also really like this essay about George W. Bush and his art. If you haven't seen his art, it's really fascinating. I've gotten to see his art a couple different times because I used to live in Dallas. And it's also about Texas. I'm a Texan, so it's what does it mean to be Texan? I just did so much research into his life, and it's fascinating. I actually sent him a copy of the essay when I got done, just to be like, hey Prez, what do you I haven't heard back though, so hopefully. And then I know a lot of my students have gotten to read this, but my essay, Thing About Cancer, is about probably my favorite movie in the world, John Carpenter's The Thing, and that's a great. I'm so happy that essay did well. It was the best American essay, blah blah blah, and it was just so much fun to write about The Thing, and that was cool. So thanks, Joe. Great question. We already did. Have you ever? Are you kidding me, Marley? Hey, Marley. Yeah, Marley. I would do karaoke once a week, man. We would have work parties. Which this is, by the way, this is in the book. I would have a work party every week, and we would party and sing karaoke. Sometimes until 2 or 3 in the morning on a school night. It got rough after 3 years of that. that got intense. And yeah, we would have this giant karaoke machine. Hey, Marley, remind me and I can show you pictures. I have pictures of the karaoke machines. Yeah, Maya.
What was your favorite song to sing?
So, there is a song called Linda Linda, which was in Japanese. I can't remember who that's by. Linda Linda. It goes, Linda Linda, Linda Linda Linda. But it's almost all in Japanese. But in the karaoke machine, it was very nice because for whatever reason, that song was always in the hiragana alphabet instead of with kanji, because I do not know kanji at all. And so I could read the hiragana, and it had a nice beat to it. And then the Linda Linda part, of course, I could sing that. Yeah. Right, so that was always good. And then I was often asked to sing Country Roads, the Take Me Home, which is really big in Japan. I love that song. I was happy to sing it. But yeah, it was funny. You're like, Country Roads, all right, let's do it. Country Roads again, Yeah, and Elvis. I would sing a lot of Elvis. Not the world's biggest Elvis fan. Although I'm looking forward to Elena Parciela's book about Elvis. If you were listening, I legit mean that. Let's see here. Emily, hey Emily. I'm in Dr. Watkins' autobiography class, and we have studied spiritual narratives quite a bit. Since your book discusses the impacts of your travels on your faith, do you think of it as a spiritual memoir? Oh, what a good question. So, I originally titled this The Divine Coming of the Light, which is the first essay, right, that I just read to you. And me and my publishers decided that wasn't such a good title because it sort of sounds like a, it sort of sounds like one of those like, I don't know, like kind of come to Jesus sort of books. And we were like, this is not really what it's about entirely. A lot of this is about mountain obsession and how, mountains to me became very romantic, capital R, right? The way that they were for Wordsworth, Shelley, Byron, and all that stuff. And so that's kind of what this was about. So then we decided to call it Mountain well, let me see. So I don't know if I'd call it a spiritual memoir, but it is there, it is there. So that's definitely something I'm very concerned with in this book. I guess this is like a memoir in essays, like the essays fit together, I think. You be the judge. Yeah, so I don't know if that helps. I will say this, I just find it so much easier to write essays. For me, holding an entire book at my head in one time, I've never been able to do that. So I can just write separate things and then hopefully weave those together. And even like within essays, I really just have like separate sections and I can work on those and then weave those together. I don't really know how to do it any other way. Hey Lindsay, good to hear you. Thanks for being here, Lindsay. Is there a topic you really want to write about? Haven't gotten around to it yet. So what is it? Why haven't you read about? I mentioned this to Dr. Meek's class, but do you guys know about the nutria? You guys know what nutria are? Yeah, Dr. Daly knows. Nutria are rodents of unusual size, and they are of unusual size. They are giant, terrifying rat things imported, not kidding, by the Tabasco family to make top hats in Louisiana. And when the market, because remember, lots of guys used to wear top hats. But when the market fell out of the top hat industry, because no one's here wearing a top hat, the giant rats just spread. And now they are like all over Louisiana, they're into Texas. I think they're here. Aren't they here? I think they're here. Yeah, anyway, look up nutria. I've always wanted to write about nutria. The connection to the Tabasco family I think is fascinating. I don't know what it is, why I haven't worked on that harder and made it more of a thing. I could have done it for Pandora's Garden, my first book, which is about like critters and invasive species that we don't like. It could also be part of my third book that I'm working on now about monsters. I don't know, maybe. I still find it's a fascinating topic. Hey, Mary Boyd! I'm in good shape to try to move the novel. Yes! What was the publishing process like? All right, Taylor. This is Georgia, my first publisher. I will say it was much more of an ordeal to get my first book published. So I was finishing up my PhD, and I knew I wanted to get a job teaching in a university or college. And to do that, you almost, it's really helpful to have a book. And I had two choices. I could go with a smaller press, a university type press, like Georgia, or I could try to find an agent and go with a big press. The problem with agents are that is a whole ordeal in of itself. Like aside from publishing, sometimes finding agents can take a year or more, and then they take a long time to find publishers. And also you're working with your agent on the book, so that could take a long time. And I just didn't have it. I just didn't have the time. Not that an agent, maybe I wouldn't even have found an agent anyway, so it might have been a moot point, but I just realized I didn't have the time. So I went to AWP, which is a giant conference, which all of my students, once we can do these things, you should all go to AWP. It's the best conference in the world, it's so fun. It's like a city of writers all under one roof, and it's glorious. Right, Dr. Allen? Yeah, so much fun. And I just went to the AWP book fair. I prepared a 2-sentence pitch, then I prepared a paragraph pitch, and then I just went around to publishers that I had researched, and I had their notes on my phone. So when I was walking around, as if I was looking at my phone, I was really just rereading notes about these publishers, so I could talk about them easily. And I will say this, it wasn't all just sort of, car salesmanship. I really did like these publishers. I made sure to pick publishers whose books I really did like and I could talk about relatively effortlessly. Not to say it wasn't hard. Before I started that, I had digestive issues. I had to go to the bathroom. I was hyperventilating. I had a friend talk me down, Kristen Radke, if you're listening. Thank you again. And then I just did it. And that was an ordeal. I did it. And that's great. So my second book, basically, my editor was like, hey, what are you working on? And I said this. And she's like, send it. And I did. And she said yes. So second book, much less of an ordeal. And that's true, I think, with anything in the publishing world. Once you get your foot in the door, it just gets a lot easier. It's just that first step that's the doozy. How do you develop the connections that you make between research and narrative? What inspires? You know what? I think it just is organic. I don't think I just think it's organic. You know, I think it's just my own sort of idiosyncrasies that I lean into. Like if I'm making a weird connection between you know, something I'm researching and something else, you know, so like when I was researching these bad movies, I was making this connection to evolution. And I was like, I'm gonna lean into that because I feel like that's what's there. You know, I try to develop, and in some cases just sort of flex like a spidey sense, like a creative spidey sense, which we've talked about today as the official term for that. And just sort of whenever I feel like there's gonna be a connection or I feel like something might have energy, I look for energy, I guess I would say. I look for energy in my research, and I'm like, what's going to give a piece something that people can chew on for whatever reason? And then from there, I can usually sort of find something, maybe after a couple of drafts, that sort of bring meaning to the surface, right? But I'd say for the large part, it's organic. And then like, what inspires me to do research? Just being a nerd and curious, and just, I don't know, being fascinated with the world. And there's just so much cool stuff out there. The world's so interesting. You know, the natural world is great. There's so many cool critters and stuff. And then, you know, I love movies, and there's so many freaking weird movies out there that it's a blessing, right? Sebastian, hi, Steve Bass, oh my God, it's great to hear you, thank you. What's the next bad movie you'll write an essay about? I don't know. I mean, I could go on about Elves. Elves is great. You gotta watch Elves. Elves is something. I mean, maybe the Neil Breen oeuvre, like maybe not just one, but like all of Neil Breen, like maybe. that might be it. I'll think about it. Hopefully he doesn't sue me. He's a rich architect in Las Vegas. So I don't know, I'm a little scared. Hey Mark, thanks man, I appreciate it. I was curious about your comment about writing as a lonely process. Is it just for this book, or would you say that it's a standard? Yeah, I think it's pretty standard, right? How does that lonely process square with communal events? So these events, I think, make it less lonely, right? So these events, even if we're like on Zoom and you're there and I'm here, you know, I would love it if we were just all here, but what can we do? I mean, this makes it so much, don't you think? I just think this makes it a lot less lonely. Like, it's just, you know, this is sort of, I almost think I write for these events, just like so we can then get together and talk about it. I will also say AWP, conferences like that, make it a lot less lonely, right? Or, you know, find your niche conference. If AWP is too huge, you know, I go to Nonfiction now and ASLE, which is the Association for the Studies of Literature and the Environment, and I love both those conferences so much. You know, those are sort of my, you know, people, and that just, oh man, that just, it just becomes your group. You know, it's like your con, right? It's writing con, and yeah, that makes it so much better. Yeah, I mean, I think it's lonely. Don't y'all think it's lonely? You guys write? Right? I don't, Dr. Donnelly. I mean, I don't write with people. You know, I don't know. Oh, we gotta go? Okay. Okay, so I guess we're out of time. I'm gonna see, let me just make sure.
We got 15 questions left here.
Oh my God. Hey, Yumiko! Thank you! That's great. Would you recommend teaching abroad? Absolutely, please do. If you want to go to Japan, where would you want to, I don't know, anywhere. Hey, Ansley, thank you so much. Was it intimidating being a language speaker? Absolutely, it was intimidating. I was totally intimidated, but I'm glad I was. Going abroad taught me more about being American than I ever learned in America. Let's see here. Hey, Molly, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you. You know, is that the Leviathan multi-part essay you're working on about that part of Detroit? Hey, Taylor. So Taylor, that's going to be a collaboration between me and you, don't you think? I think we're going to collaborate on this essay about this bar we closed down in Detroit. Okay, YOLO. Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, I think that's it. Next book project. I'm working on a book about monsters, which is so much fun. I just got an essay picked up about the movie Alien, of course, Thing, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Nightmare on Elm Street, real life monsters like Ed Gein, Edward Robert Rudolph, and also a book about unexpected environmentalists, right, like Bush, and about guys who start fires on purpose for good reasons. So 2 books. I'm working on 2 books right now. Don't forget the shrimp chips. Okay, I'll bring those. Yes, Virginia, I have. I will. Okay, I guess I probably missed someone. If I missed you, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You know, hit me up. It's great to talk to y'all and to y'all here. Thank you guys for coming. So for those of you who aren't here in town, we had like tornado sirens and just horrendous rain. And my dog is basically just shaking all day. Yeah, it's been crazy. So, and thank you, Nathaniel, for your introduction. And Sarah Vest set up all the tech for us, so thank you. And to Sydney for selling the books. And everyone else, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And Berry College, I love you, and it's great to be here. I really love it here. So, all right, I guess that's it, guys. Take care.